Hi guys, welcome to our conditionals webinar. In the past few weeks and months, learners had been talking about how difficult conditional statements are, and how difficult it is to handle questions with conditional statements. And of course, now conditionals are there in data insights as well. And so then automatically, the moment a question involved conditionals, that question was tagged 8 or 5 plus, even though it wasn't really very hard. Yeah. We do realize that even though we gave all the implications and all the statements, etc., what is, for example, what is valid in an if statement, in a sufficient statement, and what is valid in case we have a necessary condition, etc. Still, going through those 4 points and ensuring, that the right ones are valid for each statement, remembering them at the crux time, that was a little difficult. It was a little confusing. I mean, agreed. Yeah. So then that is why we try to find a simpler framework to handle the conditional statements. And of course, we went to visual approaches because that is what we love doing. And so we have simplified the conditional statements framework. We have updated the module. We've also updated the video. And this will be much easier for you to handle. Yeah, it will take much less time. So then even though, the video discusses like the basic concepts, the various basic constructs and how to use this framework, today we are going to see how it, has just a moment. Is there a problem? No? Okay. Yeah. So today we're going to see how we can apply that framework on some official questions. We'll start with a simpler one. I mean, simpler in our dictionary, the way we call simpler, because normally we discuss 705 plus questions here in our webinars, but we'll start with a question which is 655 to 705 level, and then we'll move on to the harder questions, and we'll see how the framework doesn't change, how we can still use the same simpler framework to handle, by the way, both critical reasoning as well as data insights questions. Yeah. So should we discuss it now? All right, let's take a look at it. Since empathy is essential, okay, the moment I see this word essential, tell me what comes to your mind. A necessary condition, right? Must, required, essential. They all talk about necessary conditions. So I'm given that empathy is essential for people to be willing to follow moral codes that sometimes require them to ignore their own welfare to help others. Since, right, the sentence starts with the since, and so of course then this entire thing is a premise, it is a fact given to me. Then comma, it says civilized society could not exist without empathy. So the first thing to do over here is to divide that argument into premises and conclusion. As as I have talked about this a lot in the updated video, why it is essential, right? I've told you exactly why it is essential. The conclusion is something which may or may not be valid, so we cannot take it as part of the data given to us, right? So then the first thing over here when I read an argument of critical reasoning would be to separate out the conclusion. That is the opinion of the author. It is not part of the facts given by the author, and I should not make any judgment based on his conclusion. That's his conclusion. It is suspect. I don't even know if it is correct or not, right? So I cannot make any inferences by including the data, the conclusion, the opinion given by him. That I have to separate out. So I see that this entire thing is a premise and this entire thing is a conclusion. Makes sense? Yeah. All right. So now I will write and as I said, I'm going to go very cleanly, very, slowly so that we understand exactly what we are talking about. So civilized society, it says, could not exist without empathy. Yeah. All right. And make sure that this is not data given to us. So if you want, you can just hide it with your hand. Just look at the rest of the data. What is it that is actually given to me that it is a fact? What are the premises? That empathy is essential for people to be willing to blah, 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 something, something, right? So then essential, now my thought over here. Essential means necessary condition. Necessary condition means that is a superset of my main clause, right? Empathy is the necessary condition. which means that my empathy is the superset of what? Of for people to be willing to follow moral codes. So let's say I'll just make it easier. I'll say MC, which is moral codes, which stands for the entire thing is essential for what? For people to be willing to follow moral codes that sometimes require them to ignore their own welfare to help others. I said this whole thing is represented by MC. And I have got that empathy is essential, it is necessary for MC. Yeah. This is what the author concludes. Yeah, civilized society could not exist without empathy. It is not given to me. He says civilized society could not exist without empathy. Just another way of A cannot exist without B means that B is necessary for A. Yeah. So then I again have that empathy is necessary for a civilized society. So what has the author concluded? By looking at this data, he has concluded that I have my empathy here, and he's saying I have my civilized society here. He's saying civil empathy is necessary for a civilized society. Makes sense? Yeah. Please keep in mind, this is his conclusion. This is not given to me. He has concluded, he says that means this holds because the data he's given me is only this one sentence. So look, my first thought over here, and of course the question asks for an assumption. Yeah. So my first thought over here is he hasn't even mentioned civilized society. Look, when I say it is a valid argument, for example, remember the reductive logic discussion. He has to that Timmy is a dog and all dogs are loyal one, right? I say all dogs are loyal, then I say, okay, Timmy is a dog, and then I say, okay, Timmy is loyal. Or if I even look at the inductive argument, where I say all dogs that I have met are loyal and Timmy is a dog, and then, I from that, I conclude that Timmy is loyal. At least Timmy was mentioned. Do you see here that, and this is the reason why I say you have to separate out the conclusion, because I immediately see a gap that civilized society is not even mentioned in my data. Isn't it? How am I actually concluding about that? How is the author actually concluding about that? All right. So, and my assumption now, first thought is that assumption is going to involve something about the civilized society. Yeah. Now, what kind of data will help me in saying that? How will I be able to say what helped the author conclude that civilized society, empathy is necessary for civilized society? Think about that. I have only this data, where I say empathy is necessary for MC. Yeah, what can make the author conclude? What is he assuming? Only then will this hold. Only if he assumes this particular thing will this thing hold. Yeah. All right. Doesn't matter. Let's look at the options that we have. So A says civilized society can exist only if there are people who are willing to at least sometimes ignore their own welfare. So, we are talking about the entire thing. Yeah. People who are willing to follow moral codes that sometimes require them to. So essentially, this is the same MC that they are talking about. So here they are saying civilized society, so CS, can exist only if this whole thing, which is MC. Yeah. So this is saying MC is necessary for civilized society. This is one of the options. They're saying, okay, if I give you this data, then does the conclusion make sense? Yeah. If I say that MC is necessary for CS, that means MC is again a superset of CS. MC is a superset of CS, which means that my CS lies inside over here. Yeah. Now, if this is the data that is given to me, then the conclusion does make sense. I do need this particular data. This now makes sense, right? Because using this, I can say that yes, empathy is required for CS. Empathy is also a superset of CS, right? So then I can easily see that this seems to be absolutely okay. This seems to be the answer. Yeah. Let's take a look at other options as well. So B says failure to empathize with other people usually leads to actions detrimental to civilized society. Now, guys, one thing, when I'm talking about an assumption and I'm talking about this is necessary for that and that is necessary for this, anyway, something that has a usually, I don't even need to evaluate it, right? Something that has a usually is obviously not correct, right? So, okay, chuck it. Then see, if everyone in a society is sometimes willing to ignore his or her own welfare to help others, that society will be civilized. So let's look at what, the word civilized appears over here. So that makes me think, what, it could be a little valid, right? Because I'm looking for an assumption which talks about civilized society, okay? What does it say? If everyone in a society is sometimes willing to ignore his or her own welfare, so pretty much I'm talking about the MC. So I'm saying if MC, then that society will be civilized. So what did we say? That if it is an if condition, so I'm talking about C over here. This says if MC, then civilized society, right? If I have a sufficient condition, that is a subset of my main clause, right? So then what do I have? I have my MC inside and I have my civilized society outside, if this is what is given to me. So if I include this now, I'll remove this data which I had put in because of A. This was the data of statement A, right? Now, if this is the data that is available to me, then what I'm saying is that the civilized society is outside the circle of MC. Now, is it, over here, for example? Is it over here? I have absolutely no idea. I cannot conclude from this that empathy is necessary for civilized society, right? This is not what is required. I need the CS to be inside. I need the CS to be inside the MC circle. Yeah. So then this is also not correct. It gives me the opposite relation, opposite to what I was looking for. Okay. D, moral codes that include the requirement that people disregard their own welfare in order to help others have arisen within some civilized societies. So as we said, anything which does not talk about the whole thing, right? Because we are saying that this is necessary. So essentially, we're talking about all civilized societies. So then, something that talks about some civilized societies, that cannot be our answer. Yeah, it cannot be an assumption. Okay, then people who feel empathy tend to ignore their own welfare for the sake of others. Now, this doesn't even talk about the civilized society. So obviously, then this will also not be relevant. So our answer is simply going to be option A, right? Look, we draw the diagram of what is given to us, that this is the particular data that we have. Then we say, okay, this is what we are required to conclude. That, but there is a big gap because civilized society is not even mentioned over there. And I need something that tells me why is it that empathy is necessary for civilized society. All I know is that MC is inside the civilized society, the empathy circle. But if I put the CS circle also inside MC, then automatically then CS circle is inside the empathy circle. And I know that my empathy is necessary in that case for a civilized society for CS, right? So this way, by using Venn diagrams, you can diagram the relation that is given to you, and you can very easily figure out what holds and what does not hold, or what is the data that you require, or where is the gap, for example. Does that make sense?